Emma, was Marty going to kick us off? Okay.
Yeah. Marty, are you there?
Yep. Do we feel like we have everyone?
Yes. Folks are still trickling,
Okay.
but I'm sure they'll catch up to speed.
All right. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video because my internet connection seems to be really unstable here. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Affordable Housing Week, Thursday. This is probably the 6th or 7th event, I think, of the week so far. And we're really glad all of you could be here with us. Today, we are going to be privileged to hear from Rick Moeller, who has put together this studio of university students who did some amazing work, helping us continue our journey in exploring what does it mean to start producing housing at a greater scale, housing that's affordable, durable, energy efficient, healthy to live in, and can also take advantage of technologies that have long been used in other parts of the world that we have yet here in this market to fully embrace, and help us eventually unpack the lore that continues to go along with things like modular housing and green building, all those things that cause us so much anxiety and consternation. So we're really thankful for Rick and the team of students and the hard work that they've done. And I know you're going to enjoy today's presentation. So without any further ado, Mr. Rick Moeller, please.
Thanks, Marty. Really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for attending. I'm going to move to share screen kind of right off the bat to get things rolling because we have a lot of stuff packed in here. I assume everyone can see the screen. Yes? Okay. Let me move to full screen mode. So I'm Rick Moeller. I am an associate professor in the Department of Architecture at the College of Built Environments at the University of Washington. And we're going to be talking about off-site, open source, ultra efficient, affordable housing. This is a graduate level research design studio and seminar taught last quarter in collaboration with the HDC. And so as HDC has noted, this is their graphic, we have both an affordable housing crisis and a climate crisis. And we can't choose to address just one of these. We have to address both of them. And this project was really geared toward addressing both of them simultaneously. And so it's, as Marty said, this is really to address affordable housing and climate crises at scale. The studio and seminar worked in collaboration with HDC's Offsite Construction Task Force, which is exploring the potential of offsite prefabricated volumetric and, in this case, light wood frame modular construction to reduce construction time and costs. Also collaborating with HDC's Exemplary Buildings Task Force, which is exploring the potential of high-performance building systems to reduce long-term building operation costs while addressing climate change. The studio also served as a convener, a collaborative space for both task forces, for the affordable housing community and the design construction community, and as a cultivator preparing the next generation of affordable housing advocates and designers. And we had to do all of this within the constraints of a 10-week quarter. We're on the quarter system at the UW. And so the studio was intended to serve as a case study test for offsite construction exemplary building strategies on 4 projects that are actually in the pipeline, affordable housing projects on the actual sites. And there's a variety of site conditions that we had to address. One is Elizabeth Thomas Homes in Rainier Beach. The second, 132nd Center in Bellevue. The third, PacMed North Lot B in Beacon Hill. And the final project, Lehigh Othello in Othello. And you can see we were really fortunate to work with, in most cases on these projects, the affordable housing developer, the architect, the contractor, and in many cases, sub-consultants who are working on the project related to both modular building or especially high-performance building strategies. And so we had a number of goals. One was to look at standardized modular units. The studio, and this is very different than a typical design studio in architecture education, students actually started by designing a set of standardized units ranging from studio to 4 bedrooms based on 2-foot module increments. Goal was to minimize on-site construction and leverage off-site modular units to the greatest extent possible, so that things like corridors and other spaces would actually be included as part of the modular system. To look at a high-performance building envelope, which would balance the need for access to light and air, but with a high level of energy efficiency. And to integrate high-performance building strategies, including balanced ventilation, which provides fresh air, continuous fresh air, despite the fact that these buildings would have a very tight envelope, highly efficient CO2 heat pump hot water systems, and photovoltaic panels to generate on-site energy. We were really pleased to have more than 24 participants, including affordable housing developers, affordable housing architects, engineers, contractors, modular unit suppliers, and the like. And so this is really a testament to the generosity of our broader community, that they're willing to give their time and expertise to the education of these students. And so we had 12 students in the studio, and 5 of them, Alaena, Skyler, Stephanie, Kevin, and Juan, although not in that order, are going to present their projects here today, starting with Stephanie.
Thank you, Rick. Hello, everybody. My name is Stephanie. And to start off with, we can go to the next slide. This is the first site, Elizabeth Thomas Homes. It's on South Henderson Street. Next slide. It's located in Rainier Beach. Next. Here are some views at its current state as an empty lot. Next. The site's very close to the light rail with bike lanes along Henderson and Renton Avenue. Next. Within walking distance, there are schools, parks, and a community center. Next. The height limit is 85 feet with an FAR of 4.75. Next. And it was important to providing places for the entire diverse neighborhood and a place working families can come home to. Next. So one of the big challenges was also taking something that's kind of standard, as Rick was talking about, modular construction and making it unique to the site, creating more a sense of a place. So for my project proposal, it is about activating the edges, providing different opportunities for residents and for the surrounding neighbors. Next. The next series shows some site forces carving out of the max the project could go. Next. Starting with the courtyard to provide open space and facing south for light. Next. Carving out the sides to allow light and air to the units. Next. And then providing more intimate spaces on the rooftop and ground level. Next. So for the studio, there was a constant back and forth between what happens above and below. So at the ground level, there's more flexibility in where the community amenities and live work units could go. And the overhang of the modular units above provided a covering down below for those spaces. Next. On the second level is a play area. Families can look into the play area from units above or as they are doing laundry, and units at this level can have a little space for privacy. Next. And for the units, the mods aligned in a way where there were 2 main mods, the living mods and the bed bath mods, with the corridor included. Next. And residents can also grow in the community garden, which can support some of the businesses down below. Next. And in section, you can get the sense of the 4 ceiling assemblies and how that might affect the overall height. Next. And in this section, you can also see the double walls, which also help with acoustics. It may be a little harder to break down the party walls for reuse. Next. And in terms of elevation, there could be more opportunity to play with the facade elements and the proportion and patterns. Next. And it's also important to stack the units. This here shows what could be built on-site and off-site. The units above could be built off-site with a 54-foot long mod. The ground cores and podium can be built on-site, and flat pack elements of the common room could be shipped to the site. For a tight air and water barrier, the exterior cladding could also be built on site. As mentioned during review, it also helps to understand the manufacturing process, and in general, it would save a lot of time to frame and stack up. Next. Each mod includes these layers. There are mainly 2 window sizes, one for the bedroom and one for the living. Next. And the studio unit starts with a 12-foot by 24-foot mod, considering that the stud wall is spaced at 24 inches on center. Next. And for one bedroom, another 10-foot modular can be added next, or expanded to 12 feet for more space. Next. There's mainly 2 types of 2 bedrooms. This is the corner with the living expanded to 14 feet and the bedroom expanded to 12 feet to provide more space. Next. And compared to the infill, these are for the units in between. Next. And as the units grow, the bedroom sizes also grow to accommodate bigger families. Next. And each unit type has its own unitized energy recovery ventilator. This allows residents to have their own supply and exhaust of air, and a lesson learned is that it could be placed closer to the corridor if it is unitized for ease of access in the future for maintenance. Next. And here shows the hot water tank and CO2 heat pump located at ground level, the PV panels on roof, and exterior circulation. The heat pumps are located towards the alley since it can get loud and serve 3 stacks of unit. Next. And then these are just a series of images of how a resident might experience the space as they approach the site. Next. Walking into the courtyard. Next. Playing in the play area. Next. Walking along the mews. Next. Or working in the covered workspace. Next. Or up on the rooftop. Next. And overall, the biggest takeaway is to consider collaborating with a team from the get-go, and understanding the manufacturing process is also important from a cost and time standpoint. And also finding the balance, or at least thinking about how to be most efficient with the use of space and creating a sense of place, which I think you will also see more in the next few projects. And with that, I'll pass it on to Alaena.
Hello. I think we can head on to the next slide. My name is Alaena Gavins, and the project Skyler Johnson and I developed are located on 32nd Center in the Bell Red District, which is just north of Bellevue. Next. Currently zoned as industrial use, the new light rail expansion has prompted new redevelopment to transform the area to a mixed-use urban area, and to reconnect nature through reestablishing creeks, rivers, and parks within this urban area. Next. The master plan includes construction of an entirely new street grid following the new light rail expansion into Bellevue. Our site, which is located in red, is right up against one of the new green streets that is planned. Next. The anticipated zoning on our site allows for up to 150 feet of construction, but our projects, due to the construction type, were actually built shorter, so roughly 80 to 95 feet. And most of the buildings to our south are still zoned for building heights shorter than what our projects proposed. Next. The proposal that I developed was actually called the Belleville. Next. And the main goal of this proposal was to deinstitutionalize the process of being and living in affordable housing. This is achieved 3 ways. 1, breaking down the massing through urban design techniques, reducing formality through window size and placement, and through a focus of community and the quality of space. Next. So starting with the massing, it's a basic form of a bar. Next. And this is then pulled in 15 feet above to reinforce the green street. Next. This is then broken up through pulling in segments of the mass. Next. And then reinforcing these segments through roof variations. Next. Lastly, the podium is articulated to enhance the experience of pedestrians walking by. These strategies combined create an informal feel to the exterior. The construction is made up of 3 parts. The podium is made up of concrete, which is site-built construction which differs from the body, which, as with Stephanie's project and the rest of the projects, are 100% prefabricated modules. In this case, the articulated roof is also prefabricated, but it does come to the site in parts to be assembled. Next, taking a closer look at one of the individual prefabricated modules, the exterior window wall, you can see it's notated A, B, C, and D, 1, 2, 3. What that does is it allows the window wall to be swapped out for another unit to create a varied look on the exterior, which would break up a potential grid of windows. So using the modular technology to create artistic variation. Next. So the ground floor with this proposal includes the YMCA, indicated as 8 on the plan, and a retail tenant indicated as 1 on either side of a resident services block. So this would include a lobby, which continues into a large community gathering space, which then opens up onto the Muse. Next. Above is largely similar with the addition of 2 units and a communal laundry space. Next. And then on the 3rd floor and above, these are all apartments. On the 3rd floor, these include private terraces, but then on all of the levels, there is a small community breakout area for resident use. Next. Some of the key considerations for exemplary building program focus that we had was including solar, which is located on the peaks of this articulated roof. Next. Another consideration was the energy recovery ventilation. Unlike Stephanie's proposal, this consolidates the ERVs into 3 central zones, and this maintains redundancy while reducing the number of ERV units. Next. And lastly, this proposal is defined through equity. There is a continuation of resident public space from the entry, next, through to the lobby, next, and out to the extended community space of the Muse. Next. Notably, all of the units in this proposal are standardized ADA units, and so this is to ensure that those who need ADA accommodations can have them. Next. While there is the inclusion of 2 and 3 bedroom units for larger families, the majority of the units are 1 bedroom units for a total of 99 units. And this is actually just under the initial architectural proposal that we started with. Next. So here's the studio plan, and this is made up of a single module. Next. And then these are the variations of the 1 bedrooms, which are each made up of 2 modules. Next. And then the 2 2-bedroom units that we have. Next. And lastly, the 3-bedroom unit, which has 4 separate modules. Next. All these considerations lead up to a proposal that redefines affordable housing and what that experience can be. Thank you very much for coming, and I will pass it on to Skyler.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today. My name is Skyler Johnson, and my project is at the same site of Alaena's that she said. Next. And it's aptly named the 132nd Bell Red Mod. Next. Now, I wanted to investigate how modular construction could find efficiencies in the standardization and how to channel those savings into ideas that would give back to the residents. And my proposal accounted for nearly the same amounts of units as proposed by the developers previously. The rectangular massing is derivative of the zoning setbacks and stepbacks from the Green Street corridor, as well as to provide adequate space for the private Muse between the other residential building. Next. Entrances were pulled off the street to highlight the primary uses. The lobby extends through the building's width to provide a feeling of transparency from the Green Street to the private Muse, and the community room and the YMCA are also pulled back. Next. The building envelope would be drawn back to the vertical circulation, like the stairwells and the long corridors, as well as the long corridors, providing access to light to the transitional spaces. Next. Beyond the site forces and zoning, the concept for the building is derived from primary chunks that would be carved out of the massing, leaving exposed bright insets. Next. Locations are chosen in a way that would reveal the modularity the modularity of the project, and the colors selected as bright earth tones. Next. Each inset would be anchored by a community module implemented on each floor, drawing residents through the building, thus encouraging the development of a sense of community. Next, communal balconies and outset window frames would create a secondary articulation on the building's exterior character. Next. At the ground floor, the building's lobby projects from the green street through the width of the building, forming a relationship to the private muse. Residents from this building and the one to the south can spill into the green space at their leisure. Enclosing the space on either end is a car park to the west for trash and mechanical services, and a children's play area for the YMCA to the east. Next. The concrete podium will include the second floor, and floors 3 through 8 would be modular construction. Next. As we rise through the building, the community modules take the place of studios, allowing light to penetrate into each corridor. And this is showing where the laundry room might be, having access to the outdoor patio space while residents wait. Residents can build connections in these various community modules with with others that take part in these daily activities. Next. Including interests like reading, gardening, or just taking time to be alone and be productive. Next, and you can flip through the rest of these. Next, and next. All right. We had the ability to have deeper units by extending further into the muse, but chose not to for the purpose of maintaining unit size efficiencies and to allow light to penetrate as deep into the outdoor space as possible. Next. Like many of these other modular projects, it begins with a concrete podium that's built on site. While the site is being prepared, the units and community modules would be constructed off-site and shipped to the site. After being installed, minimal work is needed to finish the exterior of the building, such as the cladding shown here. Next. Additionally, prefabricated balconies, trellises, and window frames would be bolted onto the exterior. Next. And that shows it in its completed state with minimal update. The layers here are shown what would be installed on offsite for each module. And the next slide adds the final couple layers that would attaching the cladding. Next. This is the studio unit, and it is 14 feet wide by 24 feet. And the ADA units are a bit longer at 26 feet. The one bedrooms are a combination of a 10-foot bedroom and a 12-foot living room. And the ADA version has a wider living room, which is, there's just one of them located on a corner unit to maintain a standardization for the rest of the units. And the 2 and 3 bedrooms include a 14-foot wide living room located at the other 3 corners. Next. And next. Like Stephanie's, this project would use an in-unit ERV system for heating. And as we learned, we want to move these potentially closer to the corridors to allow maintenance to them without having to go into each unit potentially. Next. These are additional systems like domestic hot water and roof solar panels. Next. From the muse, residents might spend time enjoying the space with the balconies raised over. Next. And on those private north balconies, residents can interact with each other while having a covered space and semi-private space. Next. Thank you for spending the time listening to my project. And with that, I will pass it off to Juan.
Thank you very much, Skyler. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Juan Quiroga. Next. And this is my project. I name it Mod City. Next. Mod City is located on Bacon Hill, Seattle, near I-5 and I-90 freeway. It has a privileged location for its views over downtown Seattle. Next. Mod City offers multifamily modular housing that counts 5 types of units, from studio units to 4-bed units. This project proposes 90 units total within a maximum height of 6 and 7 floors. Next. This is a perspective view coming from the I-5 freeway, looking at the north side of the building. And as you can see here, the characteristics of the project are to emphasize the views. You can also see the building height and its relation to the context. Next. The project is a complex of 2 buildings, A and B, and my work intervention is especially on building B. Building B in its program is primarily residential units. And one of the characteristics concerning the site and location is the views and visual connection to its immediate context. Next. The principles leading this project are inclusion and diversity, visual connections, and sustainable strategies. Next. And this is how the building evolves to its final volume, starting from a long bar massing to a single double load corridor building. Next. So these movements, compression, next, contraction, next, expansion, next, and finally connections, next, result in this schematic floor plan that represents the building's overall organization. The project achieves a multi-directional view from all the units. The modularity design and flexibility allow accommodating the long bar mass building units in its 4 directions, which at the same time provides a sustainable natural illumination and engaged visual integration to its context. Next. The main component of the building is the modular boxes stacked accordingly to the apartment type. Mod City uses boxes of 12 by 28 feet. As you can see here, one box is a studio and an addition box make a 1-bed apartment and so forth. The layout plan is straightforward and the stacked system facilitates all the required installations. Next. This is a perspective south view in which you can see part of the main entrance, double high hall and apartment units facing north. Next. As mentioned before, the modular stack system allows an efficient centralized recovery ventilation system. Next. Allows flexible strategies for water recycling, solar PV energy installation, and rooftop communal gardening. Next. On the other hand, a significant contribution of the modular system is the construction configuration, allowing off-site construction and reducing on-site construction. Next. The following pages are the final floor plan configuration of all levels. All the units types correspond equally to each floor. This first floor, 90% open and free. They are allowing visual communication and courtier engagement. Next. The second floor with 4-bed apartments, laundry and community room. Next. Third floor with studios, 1, 2, and 3 beds plus amenity spaces. Next. Fourth floor is the main entrance and it is emphasized by double and triple height spatial with the studios, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. Next. Fifth and sixth floor are typical floors. Next. And finally, 7th floor with the studios, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. Next. Following are a series of perspectives and sections to show the overall project in context. This is a perspective from the 12th Street. Next. A perspective from one side of the main entrance. Next. A perspective from the other side of the main entrance. Next. A section where, from where you can see the building height in relation to building A. Next. Another perspective from the street looking at the treatment facade. Next. These 2 sections shows the building and the steep terrain leading to the project into an escalated design. And next, finally, the last 2 slides next. The mod city is designed for a diverse community transmitted by the color choice that expresses a plurality of cultures. Thank you, and I will pass to Kevin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin, and I will be the last presenter for this segment. Next. Welcome to the Othello Nest. This project is located in the diverse neighborhood of Othello with a zoning height of 75 feet. The goal of this project is to house underprivileged families, providing an opportunity to a safe and healthy community. Some families anticipated to be housed are refugees, demographics that doesn't have a strong connection to the neighborhood, and thus with a concept aimed to address equity, diversity, and equal representation, this project seeks to empower its residents by weaving together the community to form a nest. Next. This site is sandwiched in between MLK Junior Way and Renton Ave South, located 2 blocks south of the Othello Light Rail Station and east of the New Holly neighborhood. Highlights of this area includes the multicultural shopping district and views towards Mount Rainier. Next. Unlike the previous projects shown today, our site was the only one with an irregular trapezoidal shape. My team came up with 3 massing proposals to address volumetric modularity on an irregular site. Scheme A is a C-shaped volume with a frame courtyard facing Renton Ave South. Scheme B is a donut shape with a central courtyard, and Scheme C is a V-shaped massing with a south-facing courtyard. Today, I will go into more details of the development of Scheme C. Next. The following slides show a sequence of the massing strategy, with the first one being the simple extrusion of the site. Next. And then the strategy was to cut the volume to create a courtyard, exposing natural light into each unit and southern sunlight. Next. And then we trimmed off the corner to create a right angle condition, simplifying the volumetric modular process. Next. And then finally allowing for setbacks for corner units to get ample light. Next. And then there's the insertion of the community nest that secures the 2 bars together. Next. There are 3 types of construction proposed in this project: the on-site construction, off-site volumetric modular, and prefabricated panelized module, which is to be assembled on site. Next. These 3 types of construction work together to minimize the construction time and the time needed to work on site. From the timeline, you can see the benefit of this strategy with the off-site and on-site elements working in parallel. The volumetric modular units are designed to be installed in a span of 2 weeks, with 1 week on the Renton Ave South and the other on the MLK Junior Way end. At full efficiency, it is estimated to be able to cut the total project timeline by half. Next. Here you can see the systems that are proposed for the project, with heat recovery hot water units installed in the basement using shafts that are pre-installed into 2-bedroom units, which will reach each floor and be distributed through the corridors. This scheme allows a space for a full array of PV panels, which is estimated to generate around 114,000 kilowatt hour per year. Next. The unique construction of the volumetric modular units create duplicate floors and ceilings. This creates a 2-foot height in between each module, benefiting it with high sound and energy performance, which is great for big families, which is what we're targeting for this project. This idea of equity continues here, having a 2-foot small bump out for a balcony in each unit, connecting each unit with the outdoors. Next. Here are some images of what the proposed images may look like from view from each unit may look like. Some commonalities between all unit types are all units are ADA compliant. This is through the belief that by doing so, it ensures all persons of disability will be guaranteed a unit that fits their needs. And then all washers and dryer units are located in the community space. Next. The following are just some unit types, a studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, and then all units are made out of a 10-foot or 14-foot module for easy alignment between unit types. As previous projects have mentioned, the advice we received from specialists was that the individual ERV units should be located closer to the corridor for easy access. Next, please. This is an example of a 1-bedroom with the 14-foot mod with a 10-foot mod tacked onto it. Next, please. For the 2-bedroom units, you have an extra 10-foot mod tacked onto it. And then the uniqueness of the 2-bedroom units is that you have it's spread across. Here you see this shaft space, which is right at the right end, which brings the amenities to each floor. Next, please. And this is a 3-bedroom unit, which is located at each corner end. Next, please. From the floor plan, you can see that all the modular walls are stacked and aligned for fast and easy installations. By breaking the V-shape into 2 volumes, this project was able to maximize the amount of 3-bedroom units to 20% of the total unit count. All of them are corner units, allowing 2 phases of solar exposure and ventilation. The 2-bedroom units here you can see are spread across the plan to allow for equal distribution of the shaft space previously mentioned. Next. This is a view from the Renton Ave South, where it shows a community mural engaging the pedestrian realm. And you can see that the community nest is revealed, welcoming the tenants back home. Next. And this is the view from the MLK Junior Way. The facade shows more of the business front with the first floor of live work units and the residential units above. Next. Oh, next, please. And here I'll talk briefly on the community nest. To create a sense of place for the multiple cultures, both the previous slide, please. Sorry about that. Yeah, to create multiple culture programming aesthetically, inspired by different cultural patterns that are prominent in the neighborhood of Othello. The community space makes use of the weaving nature of these cultural patterns, and that forms the facade of the space. Next, please. And here you can see the shared, the community tower being a combination of a shared workspace, lounge, library, community kitchen, really trying to mingle together and create these connections that we were previously talking about. Next, please. As you can see, each of these pods of community space are double-heighted space for these programs, and this creates a release from the unit spaces and also for space for new relationship to grow. You can see that it is a community space combined with the laundry room on top. Thank you for listening to our presentation, and now I will hand the seat over to Rick for the Q&A session. Oh, sorry about it.
That's okay. Thank you all for the presentations. Just some quick takeaways from the studio, and a lot of this came from the many guests that we had in both the studio and the seminar. These are related to process. As Stephanie mentioned, it's critical that one collaborate from day one, that you really need a full project team, including the developer, architect, consultants, modular provider, general contractor, engaged from the outset of the project. That one has to have realistic expectations. Modular construction will not cut costs on the first project. As our friend Ryan Smith at WSU has noted, it typically takes 3 projects with the same team before one really starts seeing substantial reductions in construction costs. We found that there's an interesting kind of, not so much a conflict, but a misalignment between the goals of the high performance building envelope and the mandate of modular construction. So for example, the Offsite Construction Task Force, which is focused on modular construction, is really looking at what are the production necessities for these modules, whereas the high performance building envelope team, the Exemplary Buildings Task Force, is really looking at what is the optimal building envelope with light frame construction. And very often it's the engineering and production of the modular units that's going to drive the framing, not the efficiency of the building envelope. As was mentioned, stack units. This is always the case in multifamily light frame wood construction, but even more so with volumetric modular. As was mentioned, the doubling of the wall and floor assemblies. On the one hand, it reduces usable floor area and ceiling height. On the other hand, it enhances the acoustical separation between units. The future of prefab modular is uncertain. We looked at light frame wood volumetric modular construction because that's what the Offsite Construction Task Force is primarily focused on. But there's also light gauge steel systems and cross-laminated timber systems, both flat pack and volumetric modular. Our current increase in lumber costs is actually making light gauge steel, in some cases, a more attractive option from a cost standpoint. Standardization and the city. We looked at a variety of sites, and came to the conclusion that constrained irregular sites are challenging. There's simply a conflict between standardization, the standardization of modules and units, and the customization that's often required for irregular sites. But also there's this interesting question of standardization and urban density. And there's a conflict between the cost mandate of standardization and the climate mandate for urban density. And that we really need to be looking at this holistically. Currently, there is a trend among a number of modular building providers who are looking at designing their own pre-approved, pre-designed buildings, typically 3-story walk-ups, so that they can avoid having an elevator. But these would typically be located in suburban locations where you have a lot of space within which to work and you have a lot of flexibility in terms of the building configuration. But I think, and this is a personal editorial comment I'm making, I think it's absolutely critical that we look not only at construction costs in terms of housing affordability, we also have to look at transportation costs and climate, because reducing construction costs through mass standardization could push housing to low density locations requiring car ownership, thus offsetting the savings in terms of housing costs. But also it fails to address the issue of climate change, which is where we really started, these intertwined problems of housing affordability and climate change, and the need for us to address both. So thanks very much. That was a lot of stuff we had to go through. I appreciate everyone sticking around, and we can open it up for questions.
Yeah, I must say you guys are very efficient with your timing. Mallory asks, for those of us who are less familiar with offsite modular projects, could any of you speak broadly to the benefits of this housing model?
I can say something on that. So modular, the one fascinating thing about modular construction is that everything is built inside a factory. And what that ends up doing is reducing the amount of construction waste. And it actually ends up reducing, I believe, work injuries too, as well. I think that was one of the stats that we found last quarter. So between conservation of resources, a better, more safer working environment for those in the construction industry. It also, as Kevin mentioned in his presentation, it dramatically reduces the construction time. So it's not like you're going months and months and months and months disturbing the neighbors of the site that you're at. It's just drag and drop for the most part. Which highlights a huge efficiency, not only in the land use, but in terms of actual production.
Thank you for that. We have another question, from Claire, which community/public health resources were considered with each site or location? How do these designs accommodate for the lack of resources, if applicable?
Do you want me to take that? That's a great question. It was really beyond the scope of our investigation. What we did, well, we did a couple of things. One is we took literally the programs that the affordable housing leaders were proposing for that particular site. So we literally took what they were proposing with the underlying assumption that they were balancing the needs for the community and the aspirations and requests from the community with the realities of the limited budget that they had to work within. The other thing that we looked at were the demographics. So we had some idea of who was in the neighborhood and what the trends were in terms of where the neighborhood was headed. And we also did a survey of what the surrounding community resources were in terms of parks, schools, playgrounds, community centers, access to food, just so that we could understand the larger context within the building was located. But we didn't go beyond that. We really accepted the developers' programs and went with those.
We also have a question, what were the considerations or constraints regarding parking minimums and bike storage?
We pretty much, because these are in very dense urban areas, we did, in some cases, we did accommodate for parking. But in the 32nd Center site, there's actually, to the building to the south, our building is actually joined with the adjacent, which is actually a market rate apartment structure. So we did not have to specifically consider parking within the scheme that Skyler and I did, but I know that Stephanie had parking included with hers.
Yeah, actually all 4 projects included parking. And again, this just came from the programs that we were given. We had a lot of conversations about parking. There were some pretty lively discussions in the final review about parking, particularly given that with the exception of the project in Beacon Hill, these projects are within walking distance of a light rail station. So is parking necessary? And you know, that raised an interesting social equity question. Just because there's a light rail station nearby, is the neighborhood really as walkable? Are all the services really already there? Might you have residents who are working far away where transit might not be a reasonable option, but also staff who work in the building who might not be able to afford to live in the city and are coming from outside the city, providing parking for them. Bike parking is also a really interesting question. Again, we took what was in the programs and included that, but we did have a discussion about the conversation that's taking place in Seattle, starting with permanently supportive housing and whether there should be a requirement for bike parking in those projects, and should there be a bike requirement for bike parking in these projects. But again, partly in the interest of time and partly in the interest of using these as case studies for the actual projects being proposed by the developers, we stuck with the program that we were given.
We have a question from Elizabeth. Did any of the modules allow space for desk/work/study areas? I think we saw some communal ones, but were there any like individual office spaces or anything like that in unit?
I don't think that for the purpose of the ultra affordable efficient housing, or the ultra efficient affordable housing, we did remove most of those study work areas from the individual units and consolidated them in more of those communal areas. Yeah.
There were 2 projects that weren't presented that were on the Othello site that actually did provide some informal workspaces that were kind of off of the living space in some of the units. And that was partly because of the irregular shape of the unit, that there was kind of some residual space, and it actually made sense to use that as a small home office or workspace.
Claire had a follow-up that I missed. Are there any environmental health concerns with developing housing near industrial sites or freeways?
Do you guys want to take that?
I feel like there's always risk involved, but for and I'll speak to my site, it was several blocks south of the highway, so it wasn't a primary concern. So that's all I can speak to my proposal and Skyler's proposal in terms of location.
It's another really interesting question. The project, the PacMed North Lot B project, actually that is an issue. It's in very close proximity to both I-5 and I-90, and so air quality is an issue. One of the benefits of these high performance building strategies, and in particular energy recovery ventilation, is that there's filtration that's part of it. The way the balanced ventilation works, it's continuously changing air. You're continuously taking out stale air and putting in fresh air and transferring the heat between the two as it does it. So it's highly energy efficient. It also has the benefit of filtering the air. So that opens up a very interesting conversation. Does that mean that we can now locate these sorts of projects? Actually, any kind of housing project that is using these systems in closer proximity to, say, freeways or industrial areas. It, of course, does nothing for children who are playing outside in a playground outside the building, but it certainly does improve the air quality for the people that are living inside the building.
I have a question following up with Mallory's question about, what are the benefits to modular housing? And one of you mentioned that the building time is significantly reduced. Is there any type of figures or like kind of comparison that you can help us kind of understand better, like how much more efficient modular building is for multifamily housing versus non-modular?
Kevin, you actually had the chart where you looked at that. Do you want to take that?
Yes. It's also through advice from a lot of the specialists that we talked to who specialized in modular construction, volumetric modular. They were giving us figures of how much these could be installed, and the figure we received was 2 weeks. But we also looked at a lot of, especially in Canada, where volumetric modular is very prominent, or Japan, and also Europe too. After various projects and really understanding how the transportation corridor works, that is kind of like the timeline difference that they proposed. And so we put that as a base figure. And that's why, like Rick said, you really need to have a team that worked together for 3 projects to really understand how Seattle functions, greater Seattle area functions.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Patience asks, are there any cases where height limits for modular housing led to less than a floor or specific numbers of units?
Yes, that wasn't so much of an issue in the studio because we had adequate height limits to work within it. But we did have folks like John Moorfield, who has a lot of experience with volumetric modular housing and who's a member of the offsite construction task force. He did say that he's been involved in projects where they really had difficulty getting all the floors in. In other words, getting the same number of floors that you would get into a site using conventional construction. And he was proposing that there at least be a consideration that you get a building height bonus if you're using offsite modular construction.
That's it for questions. I think Marty's here to close us out.
Well, is that it? Anybody have anything else they want to throw in there before we conclude? How about, first of all, we give a round of applause or a hooray or a shout out or whatever you want to do for our panelists and for all their hard work today. Thank you for spending the time. I'm sure you had to fit this all into your schedules. More importantly, it's sort of inspiring for all of us to have you diving in deep into this work, not only from the technical side, but from the social side, really understanding the complexity of what we need to do today if we're going to work our way out of this dilemma that we have created in society. And so for those of us like Rick and I who are getting gray hair, we are inspired by the fact that you folks are entering into this space with the passion and the energy that you are. And for all of you who joined us today, we thank you for participating in whether this is your first or your sixth Affordable Housing Week event. There's a few more coming up. You can go to the website. Certainly also, there's lots of good information available. If you want to know more about modular and offsite construction, we can point you to that, as well as go to the Exemplary Buildings website and learn as much as you can there about what is happening in this market with a group of volunteers trying to support exemplary buildings. So with that, unless there's anything else to add, I just want to conclude with my thanks.
Marty, if I could just add one thing, we actually are assembling a PDF document of all of the studio work, and if HDC would like to host that on its website, that would be fantastic. If not, we can come up with other ways that we can get it in people's hands. That should be finished by the end of this quarter. And I just wanted to thank the students again. These all 5 of them are in their next studio right now, and they all have mid reviews tomorrow, a big deadline tomorrow. So I really appreciate them taking the time out to do this with us today.
No doubt. With that, we wish you all good speed in your efforts to conclude your work this year. And I'm going to say thank you to everyone, and we are adjourned.
Thanks all. And thank you, Marty, for inspiring this.
No doubt. Thank you.